wanted to look at Arleen Joseph's paintings, and I hope Arleen will be here. I didn't tell her I was going to do her work, but I wanted to look at abstraction. And I wanted to look at abstraction through who I consider really one of the most important art historians and speakers that we were really blessed with in art history to have, and that is Kirk Varnedoe. Kirk Varnedoe was an amazing, if you ever had the opportunity to hear Kirk Varnedoe talk about art, it was truly, it was life-altering. It was absolutely life-altering. Oh, great, Deborah. I hope you could watch it later then. Only 3 hours from home on a trip to Santa Fe. How fabulous. I hope you're enjoying that. And, you know, when Jean and I went to hear Kirk Varnedoe speak, I remember we were sitting next to Chuck Close. And Kirk speaks without any notes. And he is so incredibly eloquent, was so incredibly eloquent. He died at 57 years old. It was tragic. And I remember he then opened up questions to the audience. Hey, Kip. I looked at Chuck Close. I looked at Jean. None of us would ask a question. It's like, I'm sorry. After hearing you speak, I don't want to embarrass myself to even ask a question. That's how beautifully he could speak and how well he understood art. It was just phenomenal. So I want to read a little bit about Kirk Varnedoe in relationship to Arleen's paintings, and we're going to look at Arleen's paintings. So it's really it's tricky work because it's an art historian who Hayaviz was he really worked he was, American art historian and the chief curator of paintings and sculpture at the MoMA from 1988 to 2001, and he was a professor of history of art in the Institute of Advanced Study at Princeton and a professor of fine arts at New York University. And the last bit of work that he did in his life, it was not a good story, Mark, is that he did the A.W. Mellon lectures at the National Gallery in Washington. And I remember he was telling Charlie Rose when he found out that he was ill, he had inoperable cancer, that he wanted to really do work that was very meaningful to him in this last stage of his life. And really what he did was, in that last stage, was really talk about abstraction and the power of it, the position of it, and its legacy and how it will go on. So I'm going to read a little bit of that, but I want to really talk about Arleen's work as well in relationship to that. So Varnedoe's last book, Pictures of Nothing, which I have behind me, I think, oh no, I may have in my other book stack. Okay, was published posthumously and was based on notes from the Mellon Lectures in Fine Arts, which were delivered at the National Gallery in Washington a few months before his death. His topic was abstract art after Jackson Pollock. His title was taken from the William Hazlitt essay on Turner in making an impassioned case for post-1950s abstraction. Varnedoe was, in part, offering response to a much earlier Mellon lecturer, E.H. Gumbrick, who, and don't worry about these names, stay with me here, everybody, who in Art and Illusion had extolled the history of representation since the Renaissance and characterized abstract art as romantic but essentially primitivizing and limiting enterprise. Varnedoe's view, not surprisingly, was quite the opposite. Moreover, he knew that abstraction from Kandinsky to Rothko had achieved an old master-like acceptance among the broad audience, but the large numbers of educated art lovers still harbored doubts about art from Ellsworth Kelly. Remember we talked about art from Ellsworth Kelly earlier in the week? Yeah. Robert Morris, Cy Twombly, and Donald Judd. Good morning to my mother, followed by Mark Harris. Good morning. Robert Ryman and Saul LeWitt. And his lectures made an argument for the depth, variety, and meaningfulness of art after abstract expressionism. What is abstract art good for? Why should we spend our time looking at pictures of nothing? Varnado accepted those as the fundamental questions that had to be addressed. He also acknowledged the gulf between those who revered the School of New York and those who embraced the unpainterly successors of Mark Rothko and Morris Louis, those artists who seemed to represent a repudiation of abstract expressionism. His lectures asked, what have we gained in return for giving up the painterly beauty and the and sophistication of the art that minimalism killed off? Ultimately, he argued that minimalism represented a profound gain, that it could be taken both as a legitimate reflection of the way we think individually and a value aspect of a liberal society. I really love that. So, here I usually don't get into art speak on this program on SmartStart because I want everybody to be included. But Kurt Varnado was the type of person that extremely erudite and incredibly eloquent. You could understand him. And I think that's always the goal and should be the goal of art and people who speak about art. It's that it's not this elitist place, but a place where everybody can come together and experience it. So what I found in Arleen's pieces in these last few days, after talking about Klimt's gold piece yesterday, was I myself have been on the fence about abstraction for a while. I've sometimes felt like been there, done that, or it's reductive or derivative. Everybody's done it before. But recently, I've really, for my own self, I have felt a tremendous revival in my own heart for landscape. And also with Arleen's particular work, it's based on landscape and travel, but it is abstracted. And I have found, oh yeah, Brenda, okay, I'm hoping to see you later. That would be great. Hey, Charles, how are you? Yeah, hey, Robert Lynch, how are you? So in looking at these pieces kind of anew, recently, just kind of post-August, which was, as we had talked about here, a little bit of a difficult month there, a lot of loss and transition. I started to approach them in a little bit of a different way. So I wanted you to have the experience of these pieces that she is doing now that have, that she's kind of changed up recently, that have more gold and copper and those both warm and cool colors in them. And yeah, I'm really, really enjoying them. So I want you to take a look at this. Look at that one. And as you all know, because you see me posting from St. John the Divine, where I'm an educator, the light in there has been amazing. Yesterday I had one group, I think I've had at least 5 or 6 groups from Columbia University of students in the past week. And since the September light, and you can just see it behind me as well, has been so magnificent in the cathedral, the stained glass windows light up in a different way. And it's just phenomenal. And so bringing myself to Arleen's painting, hey Paula, again, in a different way, thinking about that light. And this Winter Dreams, it feels like almost stained glass, that it's lit from behind, but it's not, right? Yeah. It's really beautiful work. And it's also, I called this today Beauty, Torment, and Redemption. Hey, Sally Veach, this really is nice to see you here. I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of early morning. Yeah, exactly, Charles. So I called this Beauty, Torment, and Redemption. And I think that that's what it feels like. It feels like she is working through, I know she's working through something. And you see it, and yet we can connect to it. That it's an abstracted piece, right? It doesn't have the literally what she's working through within a figurative, but it has all of that in it. And that's what Kurt Varnado really talks about, is that it was so easy for everyone to take figurative work after the Renaissance and before the Renaissance and such, and put it into an old master, kind of encapsulated in that, because it's figurative, and that it moves from these flat planes and then to the Renaissance to this much more of a perspective and a deeper picture plane and all of that. But that abstraction didn't have that kind of art historical input that kind of encapsulates it. And so he then does that. And I have a quote from him that I'm going to show you that I really love on this piece, because I love this piece. Varnado's solution evolved over the course of the lectures. Abstraction, he seemed to argue, is not a set of techniques that, like representation, can be refined and built upon. Rather, it is a tendency or habit to look at the world in a certain way. And you know, I'm doing a workshop with artists right now that has absolutely been phenomenal. I mean, talk about doing a deep dive together. These artists have committed, this is their second trimester with me, and we are really looking at the way they see the world. And through that, quite frankly, I'm understanding their work and abstraction even more. And they're not only abstract artists though, but he really hits the nail on the head when he said to look at the world in a certain way. He used words like spirit and refresh to suggest its relationship to representation, as if it's a pond in which artists repeatedly baptize themselves to cleanse and renew vision. I told you he could speak. I mean, he could speak. He did a speech once for 7 hours. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I just love that this big centerpiece here in this painting that brings you in just below where the pinks are, right? Just below that center area. And you kind of go under and through the back of it. It's just sublime. Sweeping storm. Yeah. And then this piece, vanishing point. And you know, this is small. This is 16 by 20. When I saw the images, I had assumed, hey, Jackie, it's so nice to see you. I had assumed that these paintings were much larger, and yet even the other pieces are 30 by 30. That's really not a large size. They have that kind of monumentality about them, even in their smaller size. I mean, Vanishing Point, 16 by 20, yet it feels as if it's a giant piece, even within its diminutive size. And I think that brings, I think it brings back to Varnado what he's saying. It's that it's a tendency or a habit to look at the world in a certain way, a spirit, a refresh, to suggest its relationship to representation, as if it's a pond in which artists repeatedly baptize themselves to cleanse and renew vision. I love that, because then look at the difference of each one, right? There's something tremendously new and different in each of these pieces. And I'm going to be honest with you, when I was first looking at this work, I wanted to partner Arleen, and Arleen, I'll certainly tell you this story when we talk, and I'm sorry you're not here today, but I thought I wanted to partner you with somebody who was maybe in a little bit of a different place in their career, who has been acquired by several major museums and such. And I looked at the work, and I pulled the work. It's on my desktop. I got the names for the work, the artist information, all of that, the gallery information, all of that. And then when I looked at this work and that other artist's work side to side, I felt that this work had transcended something for both Arleen and even relationship to this other artist who's considered like a star or whatever you want to say. And I think that that's interesting, and I think that that comes out of this notion of baptizing themselves and cleansing themselves, and a torment and a renewal and a moving forward and going through it, all of that. So I mean, that was very exciting for me to see that, because it's very exciting because I see a tremendous progression here in your work. And what I see in your work, Arleen, is that there's something new emerging, and it's really phenomenal.